Hi there, John Carswell from Cadswell Parish Church. I was listening to U.S. President Joe Biden last month, and he said something in reference to all the people who've died with coronavirus over the last year. And he says, we have to resist becoming numb to the sorrow. And I thought that is so true. In the U.S., over 500,000 people have died, and here in Britain, over 120,000 people have died. And his speech was an attempt to remind us that these are not just numbers, these are not just X's on a page, these are actual people, each with their own story, each with their own friends, and each with their own imprint on the world, and they've been lost. And he was reminding us that they're not just numbers, but actual people. So true, and so painful for so many people. But there's another side to that story that we are beginning to hear more and more, and that is the absolute strain of this lockdown and being in isolation from one another so long. It's just really, really unnatural. And in our own parliament, MP Sir Charles Walker was really, really worked up, and I think for quite good reasons. And he was talking about government decisions, and he says, we have to pay attention to the fact that we are a very stressed out and exhausted nation, and that the current situation is not sustainable for people's mental health and well-being. It is not sustainable for businesses and for millions and millions of exhausted and stressed out people. And I heard him say that, and I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for saying what we're all feeling. You're probably feeling it too. It's such a strange world. When I go out for a walk, I like to take a walk every afternoon, and I always meet people. Sometimes I meet people I know, and other times it's just strangers. But every time I do, and you'll know this feeling as well, you don't greet people the way that you used to do with a handshake or a hug or a how are you. You look at people as if they're a potential threat to your well-being, and you're a potential threat to their well-being, and you keep this safe social distance from one another. It's really heartbreaking. And there's times where I just want to reach out and hug someone just because I'm so starved for that human connection. And maybe you know what I mean with that. As I was thinking about these circumstances this week, I was reminded of one of my favorite verses from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, verses 36, where Jesus looked at the crowds, and it says that he was filled with compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. And I thought that's what we need to hear. That's what we need to hear, because sheep without a shepherd literally are harassed and helpless. They don't know where to go. They're hungry. They're thirsty. They don't know where it's safe to lie down. And they are so vulnerable to the threats that could take their life. And gradually the flock is dispersed, and until people are just left to wander alone. I say people because it's a reference to the way that Jesus feels about you and me, that he is filled with compassion for you and me. The Greek word that's translated compassion in that passage is one called splagnitsomai. There's a little bit of Greek for you. And what that means is to be moved deep down in your gut. You know that feeling when you hear about someone else's pain, and it's like someone has just punched you in the gut? Well, then you know what splagnitsomai is. It means being deeply moved from within, out of compassion. And even that English word, compassion, has significance for us as we think about what's going on, because it's based on two Latin words, com and pati. And com is the word with, and pati is the word for suffering. So to have compassion on someone is to suffer with them. It's not just about acknowledging their pain, it's about feeling their pain. It's about entering into that pain with them, to walk with them. And that's the kind of God that we have. That we have a God who's not looking down on us in judgment, who's not sitting around waiting for us to get our act together, who's not looking to punish us in some way, but rather we have a God who is suffering with us. A God who knows what it's like to grieve for the loss of a loved one. A God who knows what it's like to be painfully lonely. A God who knows what it's like to be so stressed out that you feel like your mental health is hanging by a thread. This is the kind of God that we have, a God who is filled with compassion for you and me. Now, friends, I don't know what your need is, whether you are grieving or stressed out or so lonely that you're just aching inside. Or maybe all three. Maybe all three things going on at once. My message to you is just quite simply this, that God knows you're hurting and that God cares that you're hurting. Because ours is a compassionate God who is filled with kindness and mercy and a yearning for those who are suffering, for you and for me. I don't have a fix for these problems. I can't say it's going to be safe to go back in the water tomorrow. I can't say that this lockdown, which seems interminable, is going to end tomorrow or the next week or maybe not even the next month. But I can say that there's hope even in the middle of this thing, because we have a God who suffers with us. He suffers with us and for us. I want to leave you with another verse from Philippians chapter 4:19, and it's one that I want to help you to keep in your heart. It's one that I keep close to me, and that is that my God will provide for your every need out of the abundance of his riches in the glory of Jesus Christ. That my God will provide for your every need out of the abundance of his riches in the glory in Jesus Christ. Friends, what are your needs? Where are you hurting? What's going on in your life? I pray that you would bring these things to God and that you would find the abundance of his provision for your every need. For God knows where you're hurting and God cares. And will you pray with me? Lord, you know our needs. You know where we're hurting, where we're lonely, where we miss someone so much that we want to just stay in our beds in the morning. And Father, I pray that you would give us strength, that you would remind us that you are a God who suffers with us, a God who cares deeply about his children, a God who aches when we ache. And I pray that that promise in Scripture that our God would provide for us out of the abundance of his riches in the glory of Jesus Christ, that all our needs are met in him. Father, I pray that for those who are hearing this message, I pray that for myself, for we're all feeling the same thing. And we trust you for every grace and strength.